1. Pretty much all theist arguments and fallacies have been refuted hundreds of times in educational and entertaining manners, which is why I am not going to repeat the familiar. I do however think there are a few arguments that modern atheists and even scientists seem reluctant or unwilling to state plainly. So let me take a shot at the worst arguments for God. 1. The argument from design or fine-tuning. A. The universe displays a staggering amount of complexity and order. Disputable. Staggering does not constitute any absolute value, and our universe could in fact be the least complex one supporting life. You have not been to other universes that are comparatively more or less ordered, so this statement is unfounded. B. There are two possible causes for the universe, design and chance. Why not chance? Being incredulous does not constitute an argument. If you pour a drop of food coloring into a glass of water, it will distribute relatively evenly in a fairly short amount of time. The dye will never unmix and collect into a drop again, right? Wrong. Atoms and molecules are constantly in motion, and the Poincare recurrence theorem states that a closed system will, after a sufficiently long but finite time, eventually repeat its states because there is only a finite amount of possible configurations. For a glass of water, this recurrence time is 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 23 seconds, many times the age of the universe of 10 to the power of 17 seconds. It may happen every second with the extremely unlikely chance of 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 23, but given the law of large numbers, it will happen for certain at some point in the future. Granted, the universe is not a closed system, but the theorem holds true for any finite part of it. Besides, this is just to illustrate that unimaginably large numbers do nothing to disprove the impossibility of an event. Outside of the mind of a conscious observer experiencing time, small chances are meaningless because there is no one around to wait for them to happen. 2. Abiogenesis. The chance for abiogenesis to occur by random chance is estimated to be 1 in 10 to the power of 40 by scientists and 1 in 10 to the power of 390 by creationists. Okay, so what? Same as before. Both numbers are fairly large, but considering the low estimate of 10 to the power of 24 planets in the universe, its age of 10 to the power of 17 seconds, 10 to the power of 45 molecules of water on Earth and 300 molecules in one basic protein, we can easily calculate at least a possible 10 to the power of 62 attempts at abiogenesis in our universe. Yeah, sure, not all planets have water, but it's quite possible that life could be based on elements other than carbon. Besides, the number of planets given before is just taking the observable universe into account. Very likely the universe is much larger than we know, possibly infinite, and it's also not unlikely that there are other universes, rendering this whole "it sounds unlikely" argument moot. 3. The watchmaker argument. If you find a pocket watch on the beach, will you consider that it was made by a human? Yes, of course, because that's a reasonable assumption given that we know humans live on Earth and build watches. But there is a chance that it just materialized from thin air, only that chance is so low it can safely be disregarded. Will a tornado going through a junkyard build a plane? Not usually, but once in a blue moon it might. We are, however, not in a position to assess whether or not universes are usually built by intelligent designers, and thus the chance of it happening randomly could be much higher compared to alternatives than we assume. Imagine a completely lifeless universe with nothing but rock planets in it. You look at all the planets and on a single one you find a sand castle that appears to have been designed. However, you know for a fact that there are no intelligent beings in that universe, while you are also aware that there is a chance for such a construct to appear naturally. Michelangelo said every block of stone has a statue inside of it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. Even though this is not meant literally, of course, since nothing in nature is perfectly evenly distributed, It is possible that the variations of density, mineral structure and composition inside a stone do in fact constitute something that would be recognizable as a non-random structure. So don't imagine it to have built itself, but rather that, for example, a rock under the influence of erosion, gravity and similar natural processes laid bare that which was inside of it. I'm just painting a picture here. It might just as well literally pop into existence through quantum fluctuations, however with a much lower chance. Given the estimate of 1 in 10 to the power of 65 for something of the former sort to happen, and your knowledge of that hypothetical universe's age of just about that, it would be more reasonable to conclude that it was a random event than that God did it. Again, astonishingly large, or small, numbers are not a real problem, they are just hard to grasp. Even if there existed an infinite amount of universes and only a single one bore life, it would be this one. Not only is it absolutely not plausible to assume that our universe has been fine-tuned by a conscious creator just because the conditions for life are narrow, in an infinite multiverse our definition of narrow becomes entirely meaningless, because there is at least one universe, but likely many more, in which life is possible, and we would have to be living in one of them. This is a form of the unpopular anthropic principle, but the reason it is so unpopular is not because it is not a good argument, but rather because it is unsatisfactory, precisely because it's completely unassailable and yet doesn't really explain much. It may be difficult to accept, but the discovery of the apparent fine-tuning of the universe is positively meaningless. It does not allow us to infer anything about how or why the universe came into existence, and it most certainly does not support any arguments for the existence of God. We still know far too little about our or other universes to even make an educated guess, let alone an informed assessment about whether God or chance are a more likely cause for our existence. 4. Cosmological argument from contingency. A. Everything that exists has an explanation of its existence. This is probably the weakest argument of all. Even this first premise hinges on the very definition of an acceptable explanation. What exactly constitutes an explanation? Why would God be a better explanation than the Big Bang, string theory, or the flying spaghetti monster? For no reason I have ever heard, but okay, let's grant this one for a moment. B. If the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God. What now? That premise is so ridiculously weak and baseless any conclusion drawn later on would be as well. Following this way of randomly using words regardless of their actual definition, we could logically prove that the universe was created by a slice of jelly toast. But the two terms slice of jelly toast in that argument and the one describing a piece of food would be completely unrelated, like saying Big Bang equals God, therefore God created the universe. It proves nothing.